So we introduced our newest employee, Josh Young. His face is on the screen. So, and I see Stacy is joining us here shortly. So don't know if she can hear me yet, but welcome to Stacy. Hi, there she is. Hey, Stacy, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Doing good, good. So
I also see that we have Andrea Larson and Kelsey Kneehands with us. We're just,
okay.
Everybody's coming on.
Yeah, welcome to all of you. So this is just our casual conversation time, kind of a kickstart to the day. We just talk about anything and everything. We've talked about economic development, porch swings, new jobs, and gravel. So that pretty much summarizes it, I think, for the current conversation. We've also in the past talked about brisket and gardening, and so it is open conversation time for anybody who has anything that they want to share. Everybody is very quiet. So
Yeah, we're kind of a quiet group, I think, Lori.
definitely today anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you notice how we don't turn our video on, so you can't see when we're sleeping. So
I know you need to turn that on, Miles.
you know how hard it is to get a web camera nowadays?
No, because I haven't tried. Is it about as difficult as getting a freezer? Because mine died in May. So
pretty much. We went to, my wife took over she's now the executive director of the chamber here, and they're getting a new desk, and we were out in Denver. We went to IKEA, if you've ever been there.
Haven't been there, but heard of it, yeah.
They have nothing. The warehouse is totally empty. Then we went to Nebraska Furniture Mart. They have nothing. Everything is empty. I mean, it's just...
Wow. So what's she using, a cardboard box or something?
No, she's using the 40-year-old desk that's still.
Oh, okay.
My kids bought a house in March, and they thought they would there's one side that has chain link, and they wanted to put up a wood fence. And they went to Menards in April, and the guys laughed at them. So then they went back in July, and they laughed at them again. They can't get fencing.
Yeah, it's crazy what you cannot find these days post-COVID or because of COVID. So, well, we are approaching 2 o'clock here. So thank you to all of you who have joined us. Sharon is actually out of the office and will not be participating today. So I am going to change things up a little bit and turn it over to Sherry for some introductory comments before we get going. So Sherry.
Thank you, Lori. So before we get underway, I want to make you aware of some upcoming events and deadlines. I hope this helps you keep you updated and informed about housing programs and everything that's going on. Also, if you have something for a housing announcement that needs to be made, be sure and let us know so we can share it each month. First one is the NYFA's next Conference Connections webinar is September 23rd at 10 a.m. and we'll feature Tim Gokatro. I think Lori gave me this screen because she didn't want to say Tim's last name. He's with the Western Economic Services, and he'll be speaking about Profile Nebraska and how to use it. DED's next round of owner-occupied rehab funds are coming available this fall. Formal applications are due this month on September the 30th. NYFA's next round of housing study grant applications close on October 23rd. The maximum amount for the project is $60,000, and there are match requirements. You can check out the links, and these slides will be included with your email tomorrow that you get. At this point, we want to honor everyone's time and get started. I have a big yellow thing that says remind Sherry to record. We are recording, so we can send out this. Let me formally welcome you and say good afternoon. I'm Sherry Alber, and I'm the fiscal officer here at South Central Economic Development, and Lori and I are going to co-host today, and this is the first time. Usually I just sit back here and click the slides. So today we're going to have the honor of hearing from, oops, I went too far, from Mike Feakin. He's a strategic partnership advisor with First 5 Nebraska. Before I turn it over to Lori, I want to direct your attention to the chat box. It's at the bottom of your screen, and we encourage you to utilize it and give us opportunity to hear from you. We'll monitor the chat box and we'll share your comments and questions with our presenter later in the webinar. Before we begin, we want to hear from you today. What interests you about today's topic? And what do you hope to know more about at the end of today's webinar? You can put these in the chat box, and Lori has already put those questions in the chat box for you. You can answer our questions there, and we'll kind of come back to that at the end. Hominy is a learning network, and we learn better when we learn best when we interact and engage with each other. So please share your thoughts. Lori, I'm going to turn that over to you now. Lori is our community consultant here at South Central, and you guys are all used to seeing and hearing her. There you go, Lori.
Okay, thanks, Sherry. It does feel different without Sharon being here today and participating and co-facilitating with us. But I just wanted to say good afternoon and welcome all of you. And I know several are still joining us or have just joined us. But I do want to welcome you to our September edition of the Hominy webinar series. Sharon is out of the office this week, as we have previously mentioned. She and her family are celebrating the marriage of her son and his fiance. So we say congratulations to Caleb and Melanie and much happiness in the years to come for them. So we want Sharon to enjoy, and she is doing that. So for those of you who are maybe new today or have recently joined us, South Central Economic Development District serves as the lead agent for these monthly webinars and semi-annual gatherings. We typically do a gathering, which is an in-person event twice a year. Because of COVID this year, we were not able to host our spring gathering, but hang in here with us today to the end of today's webinar, because we have an exciting announcement coming up about our fall gathering that you won't want to miss. So be sure to stick around for that. So as I mentioned, Hominy is a statewide learning network. We kicked off Hominy back in December of 2017 with what we called then a learning journey, and we traveled to Stewart, Nebraska, and ended up in Central City to see what those communities were doing in terms of housing. Hominy is designed for all people from across Nebraska as we seek to successfully address housing challenges and issues. So if you are new, as I mentioned, I just wanted to quickly touch on the bullet points. What is the purpose of Hominy? Well, first of all, the purpose of Hominy is to help build a network of individuals and communities that have a shared interest in housing issues being addressed and tackled here in our rural Nebraska setting. We also want to provide a safe space within Hominy. Sometimes it's difficult if we fail at a project, but we want to come alongside everybody and share. If maybe I failed at a project, maybe another community will learn from my failing and have success in doing something different. So we want to provide a safe space to be vulnerable about what's been tried and find motivation to take one more step in the right direction. We also want to learn from the successes and struggles of others, as well as to take away new ideas or see things through a new lens. It's sometimes you just hear it in a fresh new perspective at a gathering or on a webinar. And we also want to be of inspiration to you, that what you are doing is valuable. You are unique, your community is unique, and so there's no one who can or will address the housing challenges that you experience quite like you in your community. So with that, today I just want to say we are being joined by Mike Feakin. Mike is with First 5 Nebraska as the Strategic Partnership Advisor and helps businesses, communities, and providers collaborate to strengthen the early childhood education industry prior to First Five, Mike spent over 14 years as the Economic Development Director in St. Paul, Nebraska. And that's how I first got acquainted with Mike in that capacity. In St. Paul, he managed and coordinated the retention, attraction, and expansion efforts of the St. Paul business community. So he brings a fresh, comprehensive, and unique view of community needs to today's webinar. I first met Mike, as I said, about 5.5 years ago when I came to SCED. And what I remember most about Mike is he and the city of St. Paul hosted our first ever spring gathering in April of 2018. And Mike taught us that day all about the importance of just making the ask. And that was a concept that I continue to carry with me today. Don't be afraid to make the ask. And so, Mike, thank you for that inspiration over 2 years ago. And I just want to welcome you to today's Hominy Learning Network. So with that, Mike, take it away.
All right, awesome. Thank you very much, Lori. Just kind of flipping through, looking at a lot of the folks on the old call here today. See a lot of familiar faces and a lot of friends here. So if you haven't seen me present before, you are in for a treat. Let me tell you, I go all over the place. I jump around a lot. I can go through these slides as fast as you want me to, or as slow as you want me to. So take your mute off and get ready to talk, because I want to try to make this as kind of fan friendly as possible. So if you want me to go, something more in depth, just give me a shout, okay? So like Lori said, I did spend many years here in St. Paul as Economic Development Director, and so did have a lot of experience with housing, jobs, and people. And one of the things, and that's why you're kind of all on the call here today, I think, is, that first conversation or coming up with the topic of childcare. I know that we had to address that in St. Paul about 5 or 6 years ago. And so that, I'm guessing that, that's why everyone's on the call here today. So let's see, I guess, we'll just click next here. So who is First Five Nebraska? So we are a public policy organization. We're focused on early childhood education. We have economic development folks. Well, I'm the economic development person, but then we also have communications staff, data, all sorts of research professionals and the like. I guess I do want to give you a disclaimer here. When I talk about early childhood education or childhood or child care or early care, anything like that, I pretty much mean all the same thing. So if you are wondering why I would say child care instead of childhood education or something like that, I really mean the same thing. So we'll go from there. Let's see here. So next, there we go. So what we do is we engage policy. We look at the environment that surrounds early childhood education, and we try to make improvements to or create an environment that is more childhood education friendly. All right, and so you can see some of the most recent work that we did with policy. And so that is around, the decision makers are stakeholders in the unicameral. Then we also inspire collaboration by working on other kind of statewide issues or community issues, such as like Blueprint Nebraska. I think a lot of the economic development folks on the call should know what Blueprint Nebraska is. But then we also work with HHS and the Nebraska Department of Education. And so we kind of really want to create that framework or get everybody around the table speaking the same, and even in the business circles. So next. So one of the things that, click over here. One of the things about working as a local economic developer that I didn't quite like was this expectation that I created jobs, or that economic development creates jobs. I'm not the one that creates jobs. Economic development doesn't create jobs. It's the businesses that create jobs, right? What we do as economic developers is to create an environment that is friendly or pro businesses, so that the businesses can create jobs, right? And so this coincides with our work at First Five. We don't create childcare, we don't build curriculum, we don't construct facilities, and pretty much I don't even like my kids, okay? And so we don't do that. We want to create an environment that's beneficial for kids. And with my role in particular, we create opportunities and environments for communities and businesses to play a role in the development of early care. And so what you'll see here is, again, businesses are the ones that make the jobs, right? And so as we get into this talk of 4 cylinders, each of these are all important. But just like in your vehicle, you know, if one of your cylinders is not kind of firing, you might still be able to get somewhere, but it's not going to be as efficient, right? And it's not going to be running at its tip-top peak performance. So let's see here. Let's go on to the next one. There we go. Okay, so what I realized when starting to think about this position when I took it last October was the similarity that the conversation around childcare at that moment, how it was like the conversation around housing about 10 or 12 years ago. If you know, there's some veterans on the call today. Housing was not considered a part of economic development. It was, you know, well, economic development will create the jobs and then the private market will take care of the housing, right? It'll be, well, you know, there's somebody else that'll take care of that. That's not an economic developer's role. And so, you know, jobs were starting to be created, but then they couldn't find people to fill them because employees couldn't find anywhere to live affordably. And so that's when, you know, there was this intersection with economic development and housing. And it took a long time. And I'd argue that the voices of rural economic developers is really what started that conversation of bringing housing into economic development circles. And now today, there's more programs, there's more funding, and there's opportunities like Home and E to keep up, you know, the housing momentum. And so that's where I think really the conversation with childcare is right now. And COVID has really just put a microscope to it. But what we're starting to see in rural communities, maybe 5 years ago or so, is that childcare really has popped up and has been a conversation that people are really starting to have. Communities, business, working parents are all saying, well, where are the quality childcare programs, and you know, what can we do? So that's so I see a lot of parallels with how the housing conversation and childcare conversation are going right now. Next slide. So then we get, you know, then we talk about the next cylinder, which is, you know, people. They're the ones that are taking the jobs, right? You've got to have people in order to work these positions. Next slide. So there's 3 basic ways to, you know, end up with people, right? You can attract them, you can retain them, you can grow them. And all of those have their kind of niche, or, you know, that a way to work on that. So with our work with First Five Nebraska, we're trying to build a better system, I suppose, on the around that kind of grow them theme. Next, and this is where we're really going to start taking off here. Now we're talking about childcare and how that is really a job enabler. And I think, again, with COVID, what you've seen is it's a lot more pronounced now that when there are limited options with childcare, you're going to have a hard time getting those working parents to be able to stay in the workforce and stay productive. So ultimately, next slide. So ultimately, what are we talking about with childcare? It's multi-generational workforce and talent recruitment. And so what I really want to have you come away with today is wanting to create a dialogue. And I want you to create a dialogue with your providers and your businesses, community stakeholders, about the notion or the idea that not only is this for you know, working parents and, you know, kids today, but also in the next, you know, 20 years, this really is a talent initiative as well, or, you know, childhood education is a talent initiative as well, because in those, you know, in the next 20 years, who's going to be the workforce? It's going to be these kids that are in care today. Next slide's great. So I really want you to think about this and ask yourself, why does it matter also? So what does a quality early childhood system mean for your community? So, you know, kind of take a break, or just a real quick pause, and I want you to think about that. All right, next slide. We're going to go through some facts and figures here real quick. One thing that I've learned with being in this realm now is there are stats for absolutely everything. And so I could bore you to death with a lot of statistics, but I'm not going to do that. This one here, though, I think these are some good ones to get in front of you. So first in the nation for labor force participation, single mothers. Second nation for share of families in poverty, even though they work full-time and year-round. Fifth in the nation with both spouses in the labor force, and fifth highest birth rate in nation. So what does that tell you? That means we work a lot and we like having babies. Okay, so it is an economic development issue, and don't have to read these to you. Hopefully you guys can all read. But it does bring up some interesting questions that you really do need to think about. And again, I put on there that the jobs available were pre-COVID levels. But even if we could get one more person into the workforce, because right now there's, say, a single mother or single father are staying at home because they cannot get their child into a good quality program. They're staying at home and they're not working. But if we had available childcare, then they could send them. We'd be able to fill some of these unfilled jobs. But yes, it does cost a lot, but it also is costing the United States, some of our businesses. We'll have a little bit more on this with some Nebraska specific information later on. But there is cost to an employer for having to, replace workers that have chosen not to be, to come out of the workforce because of childcare issues. Next slide. Okay. So some more questions to ask you here, or to think about. For chamber folks and economic development folks alike, providers are businesses, but are they treated like a business in your community? One of the things that I've noticed a lot of things, working here for about the last year, that providers are not treated like a business in most instances. They're treated like a babysitter instead of the actual trained professional that they are. There are tons of trainings that licensed providers have to go through. And they're not members of the chamber. They've never been asked. And so, or part of an economic development organization, even though if there is a new business coming to town or new employees coming to town, one of the very first questions, a lot of times after trying to find a house, is where is available childcare? And so we need to kind of think about who we are trying to recruit. Blueprint Nebraska talks about the need to recruit 18 to 34-year-olds. Well, what else happens between the ages of 18 and 34? A lot of families are started. And so can we continue to attract young families if childcare is limited? And as an economic development person, we're always asking, well, what happens if our largest employer closed? But we really never ask ourselves, what if all of our early care programs closed? So think about that. Like, what if all of your childcare closed? And we saw that happen a lot with, around COVID. And so I just wanted you to kind of, think about that in some of your, how do your actions align with some of your current strategies? So, we can go through this one real quick. It impacts our current workforce. Again, these aren't earth-shattering or new things. Just more things to think about. Next slide. This was pre-COVID. But when businesses are talking about business engagement or employee engagement or benefits, it's always, there's always a mind of trying to make sure that that it's usually, they talk about health benefits or pay, wage types of things. But most of the time, or a lot of the time, and this survey that was done, it shows that there's a lot of opportunities to not be engaged at work because of childcare issues. Next slide. Okay. This is usually the point where everyone talks about, well, it costs so much though. And it does, and especially in Nebraska. So childcare is deemed affordable if it accounts for 7% or less of family's total income. In Nebraska, for center-based, we are sitting around 18%. And that's for center-based. Home-based would probably be just a touch higher, a little bit higher. And so, unlike other businesses, providers, although it seems like it costs a lot to have your child in childcare, the margins are still very slim for these providers. And they're actually pretty much, I mean, they're, I think a typical center-based earns, like a center-based teacher earns like $18,000 a year, which puts them in a poverty level. And yet, you know, we still are talking about the, you know, how much it on a per person scale, like trying to pay for it. We're talking about the high cost of it. So what we're going to need to end up, you know, having to do is look at more public-private partnerships in order to afford to be able to make sure that these businesses and these professionals are going to be able to continue to work. Next slide. So now we're getting into part of the conversation here where we are talking about the future workforce, the talent portion of it. So, and this is another one. Other portions of this presentation, we could go off another hour talking about the development, you know, of brain infrastructure. Suffice to say, 90% of brain development happens prior to the age of 6. And this is this is the time in which soft skills are developed. And so, I mean, everyone on this call has probably heard that kids nowadays, they just don't have the soft skills as, you know, as everyone else has, right? And so some of that can be attributable to you know, not being in a quality childcare environment. Next slide. Again, this is another developmental data. Next one. Statewide issue, and this is broken down by legislative districts. And on this particular map here, you want to be in a lighter color. So this is children under 6 years old at risk. And so you can see there is definitely, you know, the need is there. Next slide. All right, just let you read that one there. This is where we really start to get into some depressing quotes here, folks. So what's the answer? Well, I talked a little bit about public-private partnerships. And really the question is investment. And one of the things that we had learned, there was a conference on Monday that one of the speakers had said that I thought was pretty interesting was, we're going to pay, we're going to pay for this one way or the other. We can either start when folks are young, or we can wait until they're older. But what this graph here shows you is that there's a higher rate of return for making that investment earlier. So many times though, in economic development funding or state funding, that type of thing, we wait until we're more on the far right side to make investments, which tells you, which the development data will tell you is that, yeah, you can make some gains there, but it really should have started earlier on. Next slide. So today's workers need childcare. Tomorrow's workers are in childcare. Then next one, our buddy Luke from Wayne. He'll tell you it's got to be part of your economic development strategy. And Gary Clark, he was a participant on last Monday or on Monday's conference, and he actually went so far to say that childcare is part of the holy trinity of economic development. So next slide. How can you as a community get involved? So these are just a few things just right off the top of my head that I put down. Starting a dialogue. Again, we touched on this earlier, but what we really want is to be able to just have those open and honest conversations. Exploring LB 840. So, a couple of years ago, that was added into the LB 840 language to make it a eligible activity, which was childcare infrastructure. And McCook has done some incredible work utilizing their LB 840 dollars. They recognized what was going to work in their own community, and it wasn't going to be a brand new center or anything like that. They were able to utilize dollars, 840 dollars to just help home providers expand their capacity. And so even if that meant just being able to add one more child, then they were able to solve some of their issues around capacity. I want you to be able to, utilize your providers as members of an organization. So if it's a EDO or if it's a chamber, ask them to be a part of, some of those decision-making meetings. Become an advocate. We'll touch on that in a little bit more. Make a site visit. Now, that one is really good for folks that maybe have not had kids in their life for quite a while. They'll see just how big of a change it is, because there is so much regulation that goes into a lot of the learning environment. It's not just plopping a kid down in front of the TV anymore. So with First Five, next slide, we've put together a lot of resources. And so one of them is understanding LB 840 for childcare. So if you go to our website, first5nebraska.org, you can find all these resources. So we can buzz through these next two slides real quick. This one and this one. I did see my buddy Sarah Arnett on the call, and she could probably talk a lot more about the Communities for Kids initiative. But Communities for Kids, they partner with communities, public and private entities to support and coordinate planning for access to high quality early care and education for all children birth through age 8. These partnerships are customized to address each community's unique assets and needs, so each community can grow and prosper well into the future. So this initiative, Communities for Kids, it's a community-based engagement process, and it assists in the development of right-sized solutions for communities selected to participate in the program. And so I've had the opportunity to actually, let's go to the next slide. There we go. So Communities for Kids, it's really a very interesting initiative that utilizes this community approach, and they don't, we're going to put a pin in this one just for right now. We'll come back to it, okay? Because I want to talk a little bit more about Communities for Kids. Let's go down two more. Next one, there we go. Talk real quick about how businesses can get involved. A lot of the same things about that was kind of the same as communities. these are the voices that we really need to start hearing from more, is the business community. We've had legislators ask us, well, if this is such an important topic, how come businesses aren't talking about it? And so I think what you're seeing now with COVID is that they are going to be a lot more involved. And the nice thing is that, and again, First Five, we always have resources for about everything. We commissioned a study, and hopefully you've already seen the results of this study, but it was the bottom line. Bottom line. Sorry, thanks for advancing. The bottom line report, and this was with the Bureau of Business Research at UNL. And we were able to actually quantify, put numbers down to the actual impact of inadequate childcare. And really there are three major outcomes or impacts. One is to the individual parent. So you can see, and these are millions of dollars, folks. So $489 million annually, and that's actually parent income. Now, next one, thank you. For businesses, there is a direct impact as well. And so when workers don't show up because of childcare issues, or they're late, or they're just not engaged, there is direct monetary cost. Next one. And then obviously, because of, if working parents aren't able to get their, pay their share of taxes, same thing with businesses, then there is an impact to state revenue as well. So there's this one, that one. So all told, in direct losses, $745 million annually because of inadequate childcare. And then next one, there we go. Economic development, folks. We know all about the multiplier effect, right? And so this is a look at the multiplied effect. And so when you take the direct and the total of multiplied effect, we're talking $1.3 billion annual loss to Nebraska because of inadequate childcare. If you want some more information on that, next slide, you can go to our website and take a look at the bottom line, the full report, and also the overview. So the next, so there we go. Want to touch on My Nebraska Story. And I hope all of you have seen one of the campaign, some of the campaign materials. This was a really fun project, but what we did, next slide. We were able to go to, I think, 11 communities and talk to businesses, talk to providers, talk to parents, and really highlight individual stories of what childcare or what early childhood education means to their community. And next slide. And we were able to create a resource page. And it talked about what each of those, each of those people, what their role is in the childhood conversation. And so we're going to have the opportunity to take a look at one of these videos in just a little bit. But the campaign itself was not just the videos. There's also a microsite that is dedicated to these to this campaign, and it talks about different things that businesses can do to address family-friendly policies, parent engagement, all of those kind of low-cost, no-cost things for childcare. And next slide. You can see here's kind of a snapshot of a lot of the people that we had talked to, and you'll see some familiar economic development faces in the campaign. And let's see, I think Sherry, are we ready for the video now? Here we go.
We actually did not have full-time childcare set up for our son at the time because we could not find a full-time spot for him. And I spent probably 2 months looking prior to his birth. It was very difficult to find a spot for a newborn. So at the time, I chose to step back from my career.
As we were thinking about where to raise our children, we were thinking about opportunities that they would have. I think childcare, that's a very basic starting point. If you don't have that, then we're not going to have people come here.
There is a lot of need in this community for childcare, more so than housing or jobs. If you're not able to find care, a quality place for your child that you trust, it's a challenge to get a job, and then it's a challenge to pay your bills.
We employ a lot of people that have kids. There was a time a few years ago where we hired a manager level position, and that person only worked for us for about 3 weeks and then gave notice and said, we can't find childcare, so we're gonna have to leave.
The most important thing I think employers need to keep in mind is that when the expense and cost of childcare outweighs the wages and benefits of employment, people will leave the workforce.
Whether you know it or not, childcare affects you in some way. It's what allows employees to go to work. It's what allows businesses to run. It's what allows those providers to operate their business and contribute to their own families.
I find myself saying this all the time, like, I'm just a child care provider. I'm just a daycare provider. We're not just anything. We are helping the community ensure its future.
We have a situation in our state where there aren't enough quality early childhood opportunities for kids. And I think businesses coming to the table to be a part of that solution can help drive that process.
And we need to be creative and sit at the table, have those collaborative discussions, and just explore different options to meet the needs of the families that we're looking to attract. For a community to move forward, you really have to have that infrastructure in place. And having dependable centers and dependable in-home daycares is really key to letting the parents flourish in what they do.
But when we work together and collaborate, it's amazing what we can accomplish together.
This is a story about working parents.
This is a story about families.
This is a story about quality childcare. This is a story about Nebraska.
What's your role in this story?
Okay, so like I said, that was a really fun campaign that we were able to put together. And so what you just saw was the just general Nebraska version of it. But if you go to my anystory.org, you can actually pull up the specific individualized portions of the campaign for like Stewart or Oshkosh, Norfolk, Broken Bow, Lincoln, any of those, and those will actually just be community specific. And they're great. They're really good. They're really informative. And so let's see here. There we go. So next slide. So along with the campaign, there were a bunch of different other resources that were put out. And again, it's like how, you know, low cost, no cost ways for businesses to kind of get in the same, you know, in the mindset of childcare and childhood education. All right. Let's see, next one. We had some really good partners. We're partnering with the Nebraska Chamber of Commerce on getting, you know, the bottom line information out and that type of thing. And let's see, I want to get, so let's, okay, skip that next one. There we go. Let's get to the ending thoughts. So what we need are more advocates. We need more voices when we're talking with our, you know, stakeholders, decision makers, policy makers, that type of thing. And so we need more advocates, and we need to explore more public-private partnerships. And so in your community, just want you to think about, you know, how you can be a part of the conversation. So these next things, I really wish I would have known as an economic developer, okay? And you can't find it, it's hard to find this information, or I guess it is, because I never found it when I was as an economic developer, but encourage your providers to be a part of Step Up to Quality and the child care referral network. And so if go to the next slide. So this is Step Up to Quality, which it's a rating program for providers. And so there are different, you know, it's a ranking system. And in order to move up in the rankings, it all has to do with the type of trainings that they go to and that type of thing. And so there's also there's some monetary incentive for that as well, to be part of Step Up to Quality. And so why this is important, not only because of the training and everything, but when parents are looking for a place, and this kind of gets back to that conversation of who you're trying to recruit, when people are looking for a place to live, they have the opportunity of going to a map like this and actually searching for, and I picked Holdrege because we're doing SCED today. So there is one provider in Holdrege that is in Step Up to Quality. And so if you just think about it from a parent's perspective, again, if you're looking for a place to live and take their child, well, St. Paul's not even listed. So they're, you know, if they're not going to come to St. Paul. So that's Step Up to Quality. The next slide. This was newly created. The Nebraska Child Care Referral Network was newly created because of COVID. And the neat thing about this particular one is the database for this is all of the licensed providers in the state. And so if they are a licensed provider, there is a search function. And so you can, next slide, you can enter it. And here I did it for St. Paul. And you can, you know, put the mile radius and all that kind of stuff where you can search by map. And it'll pull up all of the licensed providers. The cool thing about it is the providers themselves can create an account and then, you know, customize their, you know, their card basically. So right now what we're seeing are two cards. One's for Creative Hands Preschool and one's the Jennifer Higgins Childcare. But they can go in and actually personalize that then and change the picture and all that kind of stuff. But it talks about their hours, what ages, and in the search function, you can see, they can select whether they're taking new clients. So the next slide is another thing that I wish I would have known about is the Nebraska Early Childhood Collaborative. You know, as an economic developer, I would have folks come in and wanting to start a childcare business, and they had a pretty good idea of you know what they were wanting to do, but the collaborative here has created the blueprint for success, and so it actually goes through, and you can see all of this is a free resource. You can just go in there and click on, you know, a sample work plan, business plan, you know, application, what a parent handbook would look like. And so that's a really good resource for, you know, you know, if you have somebody that is wanting to start a childcare business. So that's it. I do want to talk a little bit more about, let me get back to Zoom here. Maybe Sarah Arnett. Is Sarah still on? Sarah, are you still on?
We see that she's on, but she's muted.
Muted. Well, I was going to have her maybe try to talk. Anybody else that has that's part of a Communities for Kids community?
Mike, this is Sarah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, there we go. Do you want to talk about C4K?
Sure. So the Nebraska Children and Families Foundation's Communities for Kids program is probably one of the most exciting things that's happened in the state of Nebraska in the 25 years that I've been back. And, you know, obviously I'm passionate about quality early childhood education, but what I love about the C4K program is it's going to help mentor a community from wherever you're at now to getting to the point where you have adequate capacity to attract and retain workforce for your community, and it will help you elevate the quality of your early childhood education to ensure that your next generation has all the skills and personal attributes that we need as Nebraskans. So if you're a community that doesn't feel it's where it ought to be childcare wise, I would encourage you to look at the C4K program and make an inquiry to Marty Beard. I know that there are 30 communities in the program right now, and I know they have limits, but as those of us who roll out of the program, you know, accomplish our goals, then there will be room for more too. So it's a fabulous resource.
See, that's why I was like, somebody else can do it a lot better than I can. Thanks, Sarah.
Don't tell you for sure. You bet.
So that's it. Guess we can talk about questions or anything.
Sounds good. Thank you, Mike. We do have some questions in the chat box for you. We've got Erin. She's asking what communities have successfully utilized LB 840 funding and what specifically were the funds used for?
Well, right now, all I really know about is McCook, okay? Other communities have included it, you know, through their LB 840 program. The one that I know of for sure that has utilized it has been McCook, and they created so they used the funding in different ways. They were able to create a program, like I said, for home providers to be able to do some kind of an expansion, and whether that's just for more trainings or for maybe something with their home, with their house, in order to be able to just add, you know, one more infant or one more child, that type of thing.
Okay.
And then there was also a training portion to that as well, or a different fund. Was this through?
Okay.
It was through McCook ED.
Okay. So that would be Andy Long down there,
yes,
who has been a regular participant in Hominy. So good.
Yep.
And
Yep.
this may kind of fall into Carly's question. She said she has a center who can't accept more kids. She's stuck. How does she expand and not increase the cost of care? Is a public-private partnership the answer? Is there something else that can be utilized maybe down there?
Well, here's one trick. Okay, I'll give you a trick here. There you go. Thanks, Chelsea. Here's a trick. Find an empty house, right, and create a family home too. You don't need to we can talk offline, but there are some things that you can do with a family too, instead of like building a center or something like that. But we can talk offline on that.
Okay. We are going to go a little bit past 3 today, so I hope all of you will stay with us. But Colton did mention that Gothenburg has used funding to support an interlocal agreement that funds a full-time early childhood coordinator position.
Yes, yeah.
So
Thanks,
that's a good one too. So yeah. So, and McCook Economic Development, you mentioned, was the one that used LB 840, correct? So, and
Yeah.
Aaron, reach out to me and we can give you my Andy Long's contact information if you would like. So, okay, I'm just reading through here. So Aaron also, or another Aaron, has asked if you know you have a need for childcare, how do you start that process? She's been approached by a lot of parents and it's a huge request in her location.
Yeah. Honestly, I would look at the Communities for Kids process. That is something that they specifically work on, is creating that work plan and finding the stakeholders in the community to be a part of this kind of task force, and really walks through what type of surveys are needed for parent engagement and the community as a whole, and it identifies funding sources and that type of thing.
Okay.
I would look at C4K.
Okay. So Mike, I have a burning question for you, if you don't mind. Those of us who work in communities oftentimes hear a local individual say, well, I was raised by my grandma and I'm just fine. So I don't believe how childcare is important to our housing and our job market. What would be your 60-second elevator speech to address that? Because it is huge. It's important, and they're all interlinked. We can recruit jobs, but if they don't have a house and they don't have childcare, they're not going to come. So what do you say to those individuals who maybe need a change in their focus and their attitude is the wrong word, but that's the only thing I can think of. How do we start the education?
Attitudes, attitudes change all the time, or have evolved over a number of years. And it really just is it's really, parents now cannot afford to not, they have to work, right? And they have to be able to get their kids in a quality place that allows them to be engaged at work. And it's not the 1950s anymore. I don't know what I would say to that individual. I really don't.
Maybe we could have a conversation over coffee or Coke or whatever, and maybe do an education lesson or something. So, okay.
Yeah.
So Lisa asks if you're aware of any communities or organizations that offer backup care options for working parents.
The backup care option is one of those. So backup care would be if someone someone's provider takes a sick day, right? And they're like, well, I'm taking a sick day. Can't have any kids here today. Now what are the parents going to do? They want to try to find someone that's like a backup role, right? And so there are stories throughout the nation of some companies that will go ahead and have a firm or a business that just deals in providing backup care. In Nebraska, I haven't seen a lot of examples of that. The Startup Collaborative out of the Omaha Chamber, they've got some interesting partners or some mobile things that are kind of addressing some backup care, but I haven't specifically seen any really good Nebraska specific stories of backup care.
So maybe a business opportunity for somebody in a community.
Yeah, but it's tough because you're still going to have all those, you're going to have to be licensed. You're still, you know what I mean? You're still going to have to go through fingerprinting and, all that kind of stuff. And so, and who knows if if it's going to be regular and the pay.
Right. So
Mike, my sister and her husband own a business in Oklahoma, and we're hard hit with COVID. And an interesting thing, I was talking to her the other day, and she said, well, she'd been painting and cleaning all day. And I said, well, what are you doing? It was a Sunday afternoon. And she said, I'm turning an office that we were using as a storage room into a room. If COVID hits and they shut down my schools, I can't afford my kids going to, my workers have to bring their kids to work because I can't close again or we'll be out of business. And so it's interesting to see, that mindset shift in the businesses. So maybe we'll see the mind shift. It took a while to get that mind shift to change with housing. So maybe we'll see this is a good step in getting it to change for childcare too.
Yeah, you're starting to see more stories of innovative ideas like that. So yeah, exactly right. There's a lot more stories about that type of thing. If they even have just a conference room that's, that they're bringing in kids to do online courses.
Okay. So I don't know if you've been following along in the chat box, but Sarah Arnett has been providing a wealth of resource information and enhancing what Mike has been saying. So if you've had a chance to jot some of those resources and information down, great, thank you. I appreciate that very much, Sarah. So, and I think one of her responses to the local who couldn't understand why childhood or childcare and housing were important to the community was that Nebraska has the highest rate of 2-income households today. So it's a necessity in our world, so to speak. I'm going to, as we wrap up here, I want to say, first of all, thank you to Mike for the time and the wealth of information that he provided. If somebody wants to contact you, Mike, how can they get a hold of you?
They can't. No, no, go ahead. My information was just up just a little bit ago, but email me, phone me, whatever. Yep.
Okay. Do you have a preference?
No.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good. Well, before we make some announcements about upcoming events, I'm going to turn it back over to Sherry for some information about some funding opportunities that are important here in the state of Nebraska. So Sherry?
Yeah, we are very excited. NROC, which is the group of the 8 development districts are all part of NROC as a collaborative for the state. And NROC has received landlord assistance funds through HHS CARES funding. So each of the development districts, 8 development districts who are members of NROC have received an allocation of funds. I've got a couple of slides here that we're going to show you. These will be included on your slides that you'll get from us, but there's landlord eligibility criteria, and then we have landlord responsibility. And so if you think that you have landlords that would qualify, we encourage you to contact your local economic development district. I've thrown this map up with the contact information. I do want to say Lancaster has recently joined the Southeast Nebraska Development District, so they are included in that. So if you know a landlord who has been struck with COVID, we ask you to reach out and let's see if we can get some landlord assistance out to assist with the issues that we're going through. And if you have any questions, you can be sure and reach out to us today. On the last slide that we have today, I've included Josh's email because he is handling the SCED landlord assistance. So yeah, there you go, Lori.
Okay, thank you. So get the word out to your landlords who maybe were impacted by COVID, and let's take advantage of these funds that have been made available. So before I introduce you to next month's topic, I wanted to make an announcement concerning a fall gathering. We are moving forward, yay, with an in-person gathering. November 12th, we're going to be meeting in Hastings. It's going to be held at the Lark, so we will be implementing social distancing as much as we can. And the topic is a holistic approach to downtown development, bringing life and living to downtown Hastings. If you remember 20, 30 years ago, downtown Hastings just felt dark and dreary, and it's a whole different look today. But they had to bring life to the downtown, and subsequently living and residential lofts have developed in the upper story levels of those downtown business buildings. So we are meeting in Hastings. We'll be taking a look at the downtown development efforts and the work that has made downtown Hastings what it is today. We'll have a featured speaker. We're going to have a panel. So some good Q&A opportunities there, plus a whole lot more. So $99 before October 30th gets you into the gathering, and I'm just looking forward to it. I really am excited. It's been a long time since we gathered, almost a year since our last gathering because we had to cancel our spring gathering. So be watching for more information, and Little Bird told me maybe even this afternoon some of that information will be hitting your email. So take a look at that and consider joining us November 12th in Hastings. So just to wrap up, I want to just make you aware, October 15th is our next webinar, and it's classified information, people. I can't tell you who our topic or what our topic and who our speaker will be, but I guarantee you it's going to be another great session to get together and discuss. So make plans to attend, and as you see there at the bottom, we have a new employee here at SCED, and his name is Josh Young, and he is handling the program that Sherry mentioned to you regarding landlord assistance. So give Josh a call or drop him an email or send the landlords his way as well. So Mike, once again, thank you for joining us. We greatly appreciate it and look forward to having you back someday. Okay, so are there any last questions or comments from the group before we adjourn for the day? Well, if not, thank you once again to everyone who took time to join us. Jonathan, thank you for the comment. And I just welcome you back on October 15th and look forward to seeing you in November in Hastings. So have a great day, everybody.